before I do so, let me give you a little brief bio on Lisa. My friend is a longtime member of the JCC Association's Board of Directors. She has served as an board officer, an executive committee member, chair of the Early Childhood Education and our Centennial committees, and much, much more. Her current role today is that she chairs the JCC Maccabi Committee, which is revitalized and emergent over the last couple of years. Lisa and her family have lived in Atlanta for almost 45 years, past president and trustee of the Marcus JCC of Atlanta, vice chair of the Brill Family Charitable Trust, former trustee of the Marcus Foundation, and a broad member of the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. So Lisa, we appreciate you agreeing to chair our session today and lead us forward on our path. So Lisa Brill.
Thanks, David. First of all, Ron has promoted me to co-chair of the Brill Family Trust, which he always said I was really the chair, but so I just wanted I want to correct that. This is today, perhaps one of my most favorite topics is talking about the partnership between board and executive directors, board presidents, and other lay leaders. Unfortunately, we're not in ordinary times. Normally, it's joyful and easy, and it's, as everybody knows, I'm not telling anybody anything you don't know, but it's these moments of crisis that really test our values and reaffirm the mission, but requires strong leadership. It's a shared partnership between the JCC board chair and their CEO or executive director, and it's built on trust, mutual respect. It has a mission-driven purpose with both social and financial stewardship. It's a big job. It's a big job for both of you on both sides of it. And it's truly a partnership. The relationship is most successful when there is strong support in both directions to one another. And at no time is this support more important than during times of crisis like today. From the bomb threats to JCCs to the COVID pandemic, and now with Israel at war, and most especially even with anti-Semitism on the rise. This is the time to support our CEOs and their staff for doing the heroic job that they have done and continue to do. It's a really tough time, but all of you are up to the job. So we're really here to learn today more about what you can do, the tools to do it. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Atlanta, our Jewish Federation. We're in a pretty unique period at this time in Atlanta. I don't know about your cities, but we really cooperate among and between the organizations and agencies in town. Still a little turfism, but it's really, I will say, a lot of partnership, a lot of mutual trust and respect. So our federation, wait, I'm going to hold this up. Let me see if y'all can see this at all. I'm going to read it to you, so don't try to read it. But our Jewish Federation took out an ad in our Jewish Times that says, "We are Jewish Atlanta. Toda Rabbah to the community professionals of all Jewish Atlanta agencies, organizations, synagogues, schools, and to those that support and protect us. Thank you. For more than 30 days, you have worked tirelessly not to only complete your daily roles and responsibilities, but to also meet the ever-growing needs of our beloved homeland Israel and its many challenges." It goes on to say you've stepped up, you've leaned in, you've collaborated, dug deeper. Goes on to say we want you to know we see you, we appreciate you. We know that we couldn't have met the challenge without you. And we only hope you will always know how much you are appreciated. Those are words, but those words take feelings deep into the hearts and soul of so many of our beloved community workers and leadership. And today we're going to learn a little bit more about that with our delightful leader, Gali Cook. Gali, I'm going to give a very brief, because I could read about you all day. So,
please don't. No, please don't.
I'm happy to give the overview of it. But Gali is the founding president and CEO of Leading Edge. And just in case there's one or two of you who might not know what Leading Edge is, they help Jewish organizations improve their workplace culture and leadership so that they can better achieve their missions. It's an organization that influences, inspires, and enables Jewish organizations to continuously improve performance through culture and leadership. Several of you are doing a survey with Leading Edge, actually, many of the JCCs right now. So you would be even more familiar. Gali brings so much, not to that organization, but to us and to individuals, to lay leadership, to professional leadership. And I'm just turning it over to you. We're so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Lisa. You are so kind. And I just want to celebrate and really acknowledge that ad that you all placed, just saying thank you, that's one of the things. It's as simple and yet as powerful as that, as we think of the people in the field working and serving in our organizations. It's super powerful. And when I heard about that, I think Brian had mentioned it to me initially, it just brought me goosebumps. So thank you for leading by example in many ways. And it's wonderful to be here with all of you today. This is really a special forum of lay leaders among lay leaders in many ways. And what I'm hoping is that we are able to share just a little bit. I have about 5 points that we've gathered from all the data that we gather about people and before October 7th, since October 7th, and what really the state is of the way in which folks are leading our organizations, in the hopes of hopefully stimulating more of a conversation and some of your thinking as you partner with your professional counterpart in leading our organizations through very, very much not normal times. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to right now start a PowerPoint. And if it's helpful as I go through this, because sometimes there's a lot on this, I'm also happy to share this afterwards with all of you. Are you seeing the correct slide, not the presenter view? Okay, wonderful. And I do invite any and all questions about this, and very curious about how some of this information lands. So like Lisa said, we were founded nearly 10 years ago now, really to foster a healthy and effective and adaptive Jewish nonprofit sector, which hinges on our people who work and serve in our organizations. And we do that really in 3 main focus areas, by supporting executive leadership. So that's professionals working in the executive echelon of our organizations, really working to facilitate strong lay-pro partnerships in a variety of ways, and then really facilitating better workplace cultures, which is where a lot of our data gathering starts with, and then we go from there. So like Lisa referenced, and I know that many of you and your institutions have taken part in a variety of data gathering instruments. Our largest one is an annual employee experience survey that we offer. We also offer a corollary to a CEO survey, since the top most professional has a very different experience at work and wanted to gather that. And this year we had just an extraordinary number of folks who back in May were able to give us information about their experience at work, everything about their engagement and enablement, their ability to do their job. And I should mention that we have such a close and abiding partnership with the JCC Association that 80 JCC affiliated agencies out of 327 organizations that took it this year, that was all of you. And so just a lot of inputs are very much your people, as you all are the biggest employers in Jewish life. So along with that, October 7th certainly was a tectonic shift. And so in addition to the May inputs about just what the professionals are experiencing, some of which is enduring and relevant, and I'll get into it, we also do work with the leadership of the JCC Association, among other networks, just to get a sense of what has happened in the last 2 months that has shifted, and that, again, for us who care about supporting our people in the field could be very instructive. So I want to run through about 5 different things that we heard not only from the survey, but also since the implications since October 7th. The first is around the importance of leadership. Now, this is not discovering America. However, we have data to actually prove that the number one key driver of employee engagement, which is their ability to do their best work at work, is confidence in leadership. They need to know that the captain of the ship is operating with some form of moral ethics, direction, strategy, and supports that instills in them confidence. And one of the things that we also know is one of the biggest ways to engender confidence or that leaders can engender confidence in themselves is by communication. So by communicating with your team, and we speak with CEOs about this a lot, in the same manner that you may communicate with your board, different constituents, funders certainly. Don't forget to also communicate as readily with your teams, because that really has a multiplier effect that enables your folks to understand, where you're coming from and the context for things and whatnot. Now, since October 7th, what we are seeing, and again, I feel like the JCC Association in many ways and the JCC movement is leading in this effort, is that during times of crisis, leaders do tend to communicate more with their teams. So we have managers who are checking in more, are you okay? What do you need? Like, what's the state on the ground with your team, et cetera. I know that the JCC Association, I think every day you send, sort of a missive from the field. I cannot say enough that one of the things that really supports folks in this time is just constant touch points. You can't over communicate at this point. And frankly, if you got people who are kind of like rolling their eyes and like, okay, Lisa, we heard it. That's great. That's great. This is what you want. Over communicate. That's sort of the first piece. The second is something that's also critical to people in organizations, employees feeling engaged at work, and that's the concept of belonging. Now, belonging, we work with a survey partner called Culture Amp, and they have this definition of belonging. It's when you feel safe, supported, accepted, included, and truly a part of where you are. This is highly subjective. So what makes me feel like I belong is very different than perhaps what makes Dory feel like she belongs, and Jen, et cetera. Now, what we have found since October 7th is that one of the keys to employees feel like they belong in their organization is the extent to which they are aligned personally with whatever's happening in Israel and whatever their opinion is around that and their organization stance. Now, what we've seen is that for the first time really since October 7th, organizations that work domestically with just the US Jewish population that don't necessarily directly touch Israel are coming out and saying, we stand with the people of Israel, we unequivocally condemn Hamas, et cetera, et cetera. And that in some ways is causing some employees to say, yes, I'm seeing my values are aligned with my organizations. And in some cases, we are seeing, because we are very much a diverse workforce, about 40% of folks who work at Jewish organizations are not Jewish. We know that we employ all different religions, et cetera, that if there isn't that alignment, that sense of belonging is really being taxed. And this is one of the things that we're seeing in terms of navigating through these times. If you have a diverse team within your organizations, and I know many JCCs are incredibly diverse in all beautiful ways, it can be incredibly taxing to hold folks in that environment, especially because this sense of belonging is just being tested. And I would argue that for us as leaders in the Jewish community, for the longest time, we've had very much, arms wide open to all sorts of employees coming and working within our organizations because they wanted to make the world a better place. That's essentially what we do. And what we're seeing are the beginnings of a shift from this universalist, come what may, everyone, you're welcome, from this universalist to a more particularistic kind of viewpoint, because an organization is saying, we stand with Israel. And we do condemn Hamas, and we stand with the hostages or what have you. And unfortunately, we live in an environment where that's just not a universal type of principle. So that's something that we've been working with a lot of leaders to try and bridge. And also, look, if we just think about leadership, clarity is kindness. It's about being clear, by leaders being clear, this is who we are and this is what we stand for. Employees in many ways take comfort in that, and also they can choose if that doesn't necessarily align with where they want to spend their time and effort. So belonging is really an aspect of that can be wonderful and also quite taxing. The third is around burnout, and I think I was we've been speaking with a lot of leaders, and I think David and Lisa, you mentioned this in the intro. These have been just unbelievable times, from bomb threats to, forget COVID and, tree of life. Can there just be boring times? I think for 2024, which of course won't be boring, but, it's just been crazy in many ways. And for JCCs in particular, I don't need to tell you all, because you were really the first wave within COVID. And it's just been almost 4 years of this. We very much are on the edge of burnout in ways that we have not seen before. And even back in May, so this is before October 7th, in May, 2/3 of our employees said employee well-being is a priority at my organization. A third strongly disagreed with that. Now that is 13 points less than the US benchmark, which is all of Culture Amp, that survey provider that we work with, all other companies and nonprofits and government agencies that take the same thing. So we are lagging there. That was before October 7th, and certainly since October 7th, we've had to turn up the juice. And this is where we've seen some organizations get very creative with just there's a sort of a principle in social work that is very much called name it to tame it. We have to name the fact that these are not normal times. These are traumatizing, horrific in many ways, and just leadership acknowledging that. And then, Lisa, it's kind of like, and thanking folks for still being in it. Super powerful. It's just super duper powerful. And then there are different ways of finding ways to pace ourselves. And this I'm gonna bring back from the pandemic, and I hope that's okay. I didn't ask the Milwaukee JCC folk, but this was just such a powerful way that still gives me goosebumps, by the way, of just saying, you know what, we see you. It's been a horrible, very trying 18 to 24 months. I think at that point it was, we're going to give you 2 weeks off. We're going to give you $1,500 as a stipend for you to use. And I think it was the CEO who was the out of office, if I'm not mistaken. Which means you're not coming back to a flooded inbox. And that is the kind of thing around pacing. It's really about finding different ways of giving people just a breather so that then they can come in, with a fresh kind of pitching arm. So that's the third piece. I want to move over to the board side. So those were three elements of the employee experience. The board side, which we really got reports mostly from the CEO about their board and some of the ways in which there's a partnership and what's working really well. In May, CEOs reported feeling incredibly supported by their boards. And this is 304 CEOs, again, 80 JCCs. And here are some of the numbers from these. 89% said the board generally supports me during challenging times. Now, that is just unbelievable. 81%, the board has a positive impact on the organization. By the way, when we ask non-Jewish boards, and we are trying to compare ourselves to more of a benchmark, that number is about 5 points lower. So in many ways, there are ways in which we're stronger. There are also ways in which we're not, but we'll get there. And the board and the CEO, saying about 79% saying that the board has a positive impact on the CEO. So the CEO reporting that there's a value add there. And what we're seeing here is that when heat and pressure are applied, so let's think about these challenging times. Oftentimes, there is a way in which that really binds people together. We make a diamond out of pressure and heat and over time. And at the same time, what we're seeing is that fissures really are also coming to the fore. So what we are hearing from across the field is that sometimes cracks are emerging in that board members want a more strident and a more clear and a more pro-Israel, let's say, stance that an organization is not prepared to tackle. Funders certainly, wanting to influence a bit of that as well. And that just creates a lot of pressure, again, in ways that are very much part of the reality of the CEO, certainly the board chair, if not the board on the whole, and just want to honor that as we look at, since October 7th. The last piece that I'm going to say, because I'm speaking with a group of board chairs, you all are really the linchpin of a Positive Late Pro partnership in ways that are just incredible. So here is, again, the CEO answering these questions. 91%, this is back in May, and we've gotten some good reports since October 7th in many ways. The board chair is generally aware of their role and responsibilities. Overwhelmingly, other board members are not. They do not know what their roles and responsibilities are. So we have some basic hygiene to deal with, but that's okay, but not board chairs. 90% of the board chair and I communicate effectively. Again, communication, cannot underestimate the effectiveness of that. And 90% the board chair is a thought partner to me, especially when we don't have, a just add water kind of next step, and you all have to navigate in lockstep. This is wonderful foundation for thinking about shared partnership and leading in these times. And just to end, what we're seeing is, board chairs need support and community as well. You all are leaders in very much, in some ways even more so, because you're fiduciaries for the organization that is, making strides. And that's why, when Carrie and Brian told me about this forum, this is just a special way for you all to come together and I would imagine connect, hopefully find supports, resources, and that's super powerful. So by putting your own oxygen mask, you can also, support the others. So that is all I have. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Sorry, well, you would think like 4 years later, we would all get the same thing. Thank you. Thank you for, I love facts and figures as much as I hate numbers. But it really puts a great lens on looking at the work that we do, that this group does, that our CEOs are doing. I mean, that was a real clarifying, and it'll be interesting to correlate it to post October 7th, and please God, less than whatever time from now, we can really evaluate that. I would love to open it up to questions for Gali, and not just questions. I'd really love to hear what you're doing in your communities. How are you supporting your staff, or are you having issues doing it? I don't know what's happening, and we'll only learn it from you. So, please do the raise your hand so we can let you in. I think, Dory, you're in charge of letting in. I see. I see Josh. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Josh Liebner, the Shimon and Sarah Birnbaum, JCC president in Bridgewater, New Jersey. Yeah. I feel, I love our executive director, Laura Friedman. I put her up against any leader I've ever worked with in any capacity. She's remarkable, just absolutely wonderful to work with. And I'm sure if we did, or if you did surveys of our staff or if you did them, I have no doubt that, be very high marks. I kind of have a challenge, which is, and I don't want to I don't want to show my hand or I don't want anyone to make a conclusion about this, but one of the things you pointed out there is that board chairs feel pretty clear about their job, and executive directors feel that board chairs feel pretty clear about it. But you made a comment that other board members do not, and I have a belief that it's less a matter of clarity than a matter of desire, willingness. People will say I'm not clear, but what they really mean is I'm clear I need to go raise money, for example. I just don't like doing it. So any thoughts on the courage, willingness, ownership dimension versus it's foggy? I don't think it's foggy at all. I think it's very clear that one of our accountabilities is to go raise money.
Yeah.
And ask others for money.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking about name it to tame it or normalizing something, Josh, we will say that the lowest score that CEOs rated across the board, their boards, is around fundraising. Okay. Ability to open doors, ability to actually make an ask. Yes, it just is one of those things. And by the way, Board Source, which is again the like non-Jewish corollary, finds the same thing. There is around that. Now, greater roles and responsibilities, it's a bit different, again, normalized in the Jewish community, because in many ways we operate like a family business industry. Mm-hmm. So it's relational, and I'm the donor owner, and there is a way in which there isn't as much professionalization as there are if you were to be, I don't know, on the museum board or something like that. And that's where it is a little bit more informal, or, like Josh has it, like there is a little bit of that. But also we see just there are some fundamental holes in the ways in which board leaders are supported and really nurtured. We work with a business school professor who said, there are 3 roles that are key to society that you never get any training on. 1 is juror. 2 is parent. Absolutely. 3, board member. Right? It's like there are these things. So on the one hand, like, it's true that there's a little bit of human nature of like, of course, I know I'm supposed to raise money, but I'm not going to because I don't like to ask. Absolutely. At the same time, we have found that Jewish nonprofit boards do lag general nonprofit boards on just, basic hygiene, honestly, of just what am I supposed to do and what's my role? And a lot of them don't even know they're a fiduciary and like held accountable to a bunch of stuff, So I'm going to normalize and also say there is a world in which we could definitely do a better job of supporting board leadership as you all serve in ways that really impact our organizations.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, Dory, DC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeremy, go on.
Thank you. Golly, my ears kind of perked up when you were talking about belonging and a statement of values, condemning Hamas. And this is something I've thought about before, but I'm interested to hear you expound on this a little bit more. It seems to me that in situations like this, belonging is a value that doesn't supersede other values, and that if we as an organization have a clear stance on something that is consistent with our values, we may find ourselves in a place where some of our employees or some of our members start to believe that doesn't gel with their values, and it seems to me that like that's okay. That if you decide you're not comfortable working here because these are the values of this organization, to me personally that seems like that should be okay, and that may just be where the chips fall. But I'm curious to hear you expound on that tension a little bit more, and maybe some practical thoughts on how to navigate that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will say that the belonging factor is one that we've been doing this survey for about 7 years. And really 3 years ago, right around COVID, the pandemic, Gen Z entering the workforce, belonging really crept up as almost like an intersection of psychological safety, a certain level of authenticity, and then that leading to an employee being able to come to work without too many masks and therefore being able to do, their best work. Belonging is also really, as I mentioned, super subjective. And October 7th was a watershed moment in many different ways, but as it relates to values clarification, a lot of Jewish organizations really only talked about values that were super universal. You know, the equivalent of like, you know, don't hurt puppies, you know, like how could you argue with that? Tikkun olam, you know, like all that stuff. And of course, anyone who's purpose driven, who has, you know, choice is going to say, yeah, I align with those values. Because of October 7th, organizations have had to become more clear, which I think is good. Again, clarity is kindness. There really is a way in which you want to understand, who am I, what kind of culture am I, you know, giving the majority of my waking hours to at work. And what we found is we are seeing people who are opting out. I mean, truly. Look, there's some people who are opting in. Like, I got to tell you, the amount of folks who are working in different contexts, like Jews working who would never think of volunteering at a Jewish organization or contributing to a Jewish organization or potentially switching careers into a Jewish organization, are like, you know, put me in, coach. So there is a way in which we've disrupted sort of the equilibrium. And I think that is just the physics of this moment in many ways. I will share that Leading Edge had to come out with a statement internally to our team. We never make statement. As a statement, we never make a statement. You know, it's just like, we just make a statement all the time. But we were like, guys, there should not be any like fog. You know, we have to be clear as day here. This is who we are. And also we embrace diversity and understand that there will be, you know, the chips fall where they may. It's just a consequence, I will say, that we haven't encountered before. You know, a lot of times it's been come what may, we're very welcome, very open. There's like these universal principles that, again, no one who's purpose driven is going to argue with. You know, welcome everybody, I mean, especially with the JCCs. You all are like the front door of the Jewish community. You know, who can argue with that? And yet, you know, maybe they don't pay attention to the fact that there's a mezuzah on the door that maybe you'll kiss on the way in, you know, and that's where it's like, well, wait a second. And look, I will say there's a generational piece here too, as I know this group knows. We do have a lot of younger folks, and I would say this is probably certainly under 25, and sometimes in some cases under 30, folks who have never had to wrestle with their Jewish identity or thought one thing, and then October 7th, you know, just ruptured in a way that is creating a lot of challenges for them and reconciling for them. You know, where do they fit in when, you know, maybe their crowd is sort of going in a direction that's, you know, clearly anti-Israel. So yeah, it's super messy.
Gali, while we're waiting for other questions to come up, in addition to giving the example that you did of the Milwaukee JCC and their concept of giving everyone a Shabbaton, as our board chairs think about how they can take care of, acknowledge, reward their CEOs and their staffs, have you seen other examples that might help us all generate some ideas?
Yeah, I've seen a lot. Some are possible, some I would say are not possible for JCCs given the place-basedness and needing to keep the doors open. So in that regard, we have seen organizations that have shut down for a week, you know, last week of the year, or Passover or Sukkot, and just said, you know what, everyone org-wide shut down. And then again, you don't come back to 500 emails and, you know, angry people, whatever. That's been one. We've seen organizations do something as simple as like bring in therapy dogs. This is all the rage. And buddies. I guess there are therapy buddies. I don't know. But just, you know, there is something about we've all gone through multiple traumas, if anyone's been paying attention to what's been happening. And from a trauma therapy perspective, you have to get very visceral. And what better way than, you know, holding a puppy and just being very present in all the senses. We've seen that. We've had truly a bunch of puppies. It's very big in federations. I just did something with JFNA, and I think like 10 different federations were like, we did puppies too. Something like that. Some level of appreciation. We have seen board members write to employees, like specifically saying, you know, I see you, you're doing a great job, keep it going. Because again, acknowledging just, you know, you're going above and beyond and sort of on the edge of burnout, again, sort of helpful to see. We've also seen, I guess, more tactical and technical types of things, different board members giving executive teams coaching supports, let's say, if they have to like figure out how to navigate a specific question. We've also seen just really like gift cards in a variety of ways. And they don't have to be big, but, you know, just again, like a Hanukkah gift being like, again, I see you, that type of stuff. And a more strategic level, I mean, the board, you know, you all really, you set the vision and the strategy for the organization. And of course, then there's the financial element of things. What we have seen is some boards really helping the executive just eliminate noise and saying, this is not normal. Do not do that. In fact, say no. And that, as we know, saying no is the heart of strategy. So in many ways, we've seen a number of organizations with their board and their team look at some of the organizational priorities and either, you know, punt things to later, put stuff on hold, or just say, you know what, we're just not going to do it in light of in light of what's happening. And again, that creates white space and isn't just like yes and, especially if you're in an emergency responsive sort of organization. Yeah, so those are some of the things that we've seen. I'm eager to hear also if there are other ideas. I was not expecting puppies as I spoke with Federation, but that was sort of fun.
Gali, you spoke about early on about the leading edge survey that roughly half the JCCs in this field staffs participated in. Can you talk a little about the role and the hope that the baseline information for boards to be able to do their oversight, not the management, but the oversight about the idea of boards really understanding the high level data so that they have a sense of what workforce culture looks like in their JCCs?
Yeah, this has been the best, I would say, outgrowth, and this was not necessarily the main thrust of why we wanted to do some quantitative analysis into a highly qualitative and subjective thing like employee experience. But there are ways in which we ask about over 100 questions on this tool, and there are about 10 questions that are really like the master dominoes in a way, that if you were to figure those out, everything else in terms of workplace culture and the ability of employees to be aligned, to be held accountable, and therefore to be most productive and get the kind of results that our community needs, those are really the ones that it's been very helpful to quiet some of the noise and see what are ways in which really financially also budgets can really help some of that employee experience be augmented. So we've seen a variety of folks, and Brian, I think you led this as an early adopter to our survey and really a super user at that. Really sharing some of the high level, you know, top line. Here are some of our strengths. Here's some of our growth areas. Here's the plan forward. And then there's sometimes budgetary implications of that in a very concrete way to be able to say, here's where we are. Here's where we hope to be. And then year over year, be able to actually track it. That is part of the trend, or every other year, depending on the cadence of the survey. And what we're hoping actually is to be able to do this on the board side as well. So we have an employee experience survey, and next year we're actually going to be piloting a board experience survey. And we're going to partner with two umbrellas, the JCC Association being one of them, and JFNA being another. So I just again want to thank JCC Association for being such amazing partners and really pioneers, honestly, in this work.
Any more questions? I'm going to take what you said today, Gali, of clarity is kindness. I like going to have shirts made. I love that. And I thank you for that. We all, Brian, you know, Pittsburghers, we just kind of, that was our motto growing up, and I guess we should have all listened to it. So thank you for that. And I hope for each one of you, before I turn this back over to David, that when you light your menorahs tonight on this last beautiful night of Hanukkah, that as the lights burn bright, that the clarity brings kindness to this world. We can all use it right now. Thank you all for inviting us here. And David, it's up to you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for leading this program today. Gali, it's great to see you. Thank you for your guidance and counsel and support. And we appreciate the relationship that we have with you within the JCC Association of North America, as well as across the movement. So we appreciate everything today. And with that, I want to wish everybody well. This is the final night of Hanukkah. Right around the corner is a brand new year, and I wish you and all of your families and loved ones a happy, healthy, and hopefully brighter new year for everyone. So across the movement, across the world, and within Israel. So all the best to everybody, and thank you for joining us today. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks all.
Hi. You're, oh.